Our third session today. In our 3 sessions today, we're ending, which I think is a really interesting case study, because the early papers we've been focusing on identifying drivers and the role of word of mouth. And today, to end the presentations, to the sessions today, in today's presentations, we also have an additional element which I think is so really interesting, is how to land this information in your company and make it come alive and make sure that the company acts on it. So I think you'll find this really interesting. So welcome Crystal Day. She's Senior Manager for Global Brands and Communications at Hewlett Packard. And Casey Doster, VP Account Service with Communicus. And we are all looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
All right, so really high level, what we're going to talk about today ties in nicely with what the new research ARF presented yesterday and how advertising works today. And so in our case study, we're going to talk about how can you tell if your advertising is working when you have a low media spend, a really hard to reach target, and long purchase cycles. So that's what we were up against. And we use research to help us answer. So first off, when you guys think of HP, what product or services come to mind? Anyone? Computers. Printers.
All right. That is what most people say. So actually, this is one of the barriers we were working against in this particular campaign, because we were trying to promote our enterprise solutions, big data, cloud, mobility, and security. And our legacy in that hardware area was working against us in here, because we weren't in the mindset when people were thinking of enterprise solutions. There's a lot of competitors in this space, so we had a lot of competition. So to really get top of mind and in their consideration set was quite a challenge. So this is a high level of what we had, our Make It Matter campaign targeted towards enterprise, really high level IT decision makers in C-suite, so very hard to reach target. We had TV, digital, print, and online, out of home. So a lot of across different platforms. And here, Chris, if you want to go ahead and show the video, here's one of the TV spots.
Keeping 1 billion customers a year flying means keeping 2 billion transactions flowing. And when the bad weather hits, it's data mayhem. But airlines running HP end-to-end solutions are always calm during a storm. So if your business deals with the unexpected, HP's big data and cloud solutions make sure you always know what's coming and are ready for it. Make it matter.
So another challenge we were facing with this campaign was that there, especially when we're talking about services, there's a lot longer purchase cycles than with a PC or a printer. So we couldn't count on just short-term sales to show that the advertising was working. So our business objectives here were really to get on the consideration list for these enterprise level solutions, and how do we position ourselves as a leader in this area and kind of overcome that idea that we're just a PC and printer company. And with that, I'll hand it over to Casey, who managed our research for us through Communicus. Thank you.
So as Crystal mentioned, one of the biggest research challenges was the long considered purchase cycle, and the fact that the objectives of this campaign are really to get on the consideration list, and it's really more of those top of the purchase funnel dynamics that we're trying to isolate. And this was a short amount of time. The campaign only ran for a couple months when the organization really needed the results to say whether or not advertising targeted towards enterprise level IT decision makers actually works and is actually worthwhile and is worth continued investment. So they invested this initial $10 million in the US and about $7 million in the UK. A few months, are we getting on the consideration list? So that was a big challenge of the research. The other challenge is the fact that these are high-level IT decision makers within enterprise-size organizations, so organizations with 500 or more employees. We really needed to talk to the people who are making the decisions for these specific services. So these are not people who are traditionally included in HP's brand trackers or advertising trackers, and a really more difficult target to reach. The other challenge is that with such a small media investment, not everyone's going to see the campaign. So we know that it's only going to reach a certain amount of people, so we really need to track what's happening among that smaller group of people who's actually seeing it. So just being able to track overall change, if we had matched samples of decision makers pre and post, with such a big brand like HP, we probably wouldn't see significant changes just on a pre to post basis. Also, as researchers, we all know we can't just rely on claimed responses to advertising. Did you see it? How did it make you feel about HP? Would you consider buying their products or services? It's just not reliable research. We also know that going in after the fact and finding out whether or not people saw the advertising and then how they felt about HP is also not reliable, because there's a degree of what we call at Communicus selective perception, meaning that people who are already customers of HP or already more favorable towards HP are going to be the ones to pay attention to the advertising. So if you go in after the fact and say those who saw it are more favorable, you don't know if they were more favorable so they paid attention, or if the advertising actually made them more favorable. And finally, identifying how advertising could work if optimized. This was a much bigger business question than does this campaign work, but it's do we need to advertise on an enterprise level? So separating out the performance of this particular creative from what could be if the campaign was optimized, and does HP really need to invest in advertising overall, was a much bigger question. So kind of needing to separate out the performance of this campaign versus what could be. So the solution, we specialize in longitudinal research at Communicus, so we interview the same people at 2 points in time. So again, these hard-to-reach decision makers, we had to find about 1,500 of them in the pre to go back to about 500 of them 3 months later, recontacting the exact same individuals. We work with some great panel partners that allow us to be able to reach and engage the right people, and of course, optimizing the survey to keep them engaged throughout. In both the pre and post, we ask them the brand questions, their awareness that HP offers these solutions, their perceptions of HP as an enterprise solution technology leader, and so forth. In the pre-wave, we don't ask at all about advertising. We're just getting the baseline of how they feel about the brands before the advertising launches. And then in the post-wave, we go back to those same people. We ask them the exact same questions. So on an individual level, we know how they've changed over time. And then in that post-wave, we also use limited recognition cues for the advertising to determine with a 90% accuracy which specific ads within the campaign they've actually seen between pre and post. So the analysis, it involves looking at changes that happened over time in brand KPIs among people who didn't see the campaign versus those who did. So it allows us to really isolate the impact of advertising outside of pre-existing perceptions of the brand and outside of other marketplace factors, because we're looking at these kind of self-selecting test and control groups. So if we were just to look at matched samples pre and post and find out how they feel about the brand, and maybe not a lot of people are seeing the advertising and we're not seeing any movement, we might conclude that the advertising doesn't work. But using this methodology, it allows us to see the underlying dynamics that are happening. And in fact, it's very common for advertising to play more of a defensive role in offsetting declines that would otherwise be happening. So if you weren't advertising, you might see the brand deteriorate, and the advertising actually does create lifts. You just need to get more people to see it. The other requirement with this research, HP really wanted demonstrable proof, not just the quantitative, but they wanted to hear directly from their decision makers how they felt about the campaign and whether or not it was changing their minds about HP. So at the end of the quantitative interview in the post-wave, we provided an additional incentive for about 25 to 30 of these IT decision makers, showed them the full exposure to the campaign, and then had them respond to questions via their webcam about how they felt about the campaign and how it made them feel about HP. So in addition to the quantitative research, we had this direct from the target feedback on how they felt about the campaign. I'll show you some clips of that in a minute. So the results, we were able to quantify the impact that the advertising was having, and in fact, this was a very powerful campaign, teaching these decision makers new things that they didn't know about HP and the services they didn't know that HP offered, in addition to lifts in bringing HP, establishing HP as a leader in advanced business technology solutions, innovative business technology solutions, and actually putting them on the consideration set for the specific services in this IT sector. So these are the lifts and some of the KPIs among people who were seeing the advertising. And the other thing that we were able to quantify that was a really important dynamic is what was happening over time among those people who didn't see this campaign. And in fact, we were seeing deterioration in the KPIs among people who don't see HP advertising. As Crystal mentioned, it's a really, really competitive environment. So if they're not seeing HP advertising, they're being convinced by IBM with their huge advertising budgets. So this really represented what HP stood to lose if they don't continue to advertise in this area. So we know that the campaign was powerful. The issue was that not a lot of people had branded awareness of the ads. And in fact, there was a group of people who had seen the advertising, but they didn't necessarily link it back to HP. It's really tough to achieve brand linkage in advertising in general, and especially in this category, and especially for HP, who's not necessarily known. It's kind of a surprising message coming from HP that you see this ad and you don't automatically think that that would be coming from HP. So brand linkage is definitely a hurdle where the campaign investment could be optimized if you got more of those who see it to link it back to HP. So we talked about some brand linkage solutions in specific creative, increasing the focus on the brand, introducing the brand earlier and more often. But more importantly, what we find at Communicus, and this has been a big theme from the ARF research, is the unifying creative concepts. So as they see more elements within the campaign, they start to learn that, oh, this is another one of those ads from HP. So to the extent that you can create creative synergies, you improve brand linkage as you get more intensity in people seeing more different ads. The other issue was that you still have this huge group of people who just didn't see the ads at all. And we know this was pretty early on with a pretty light investment. We looked at where the TV commercials were performing on the vertical axis, how many people had seen them versus how many TRPs, and the dotted line there represents what a typical commercial would achieve in terms of awareness relative to TRPs. So in the US particularly, all three of these spots were still in the building part of the curve, so there was opportunity to increase the awareness of these commercials if they continued to spend. And they were performing, relatively similar to a typical commercial, so it's not like they weren't engaging, they weren't drawing people in, it's just they didn't have a lot of investment yet. We also identified places within the media plan that could be optimized, for example, in the US, where we saw the TV commercials performing in line with expectations relative to TRPs. This was a media buy that was much more targeted to the IT decision makers, so they spent a little bit more money to buy those TRPs that are really going to reach these decision makers, whereas in the UK, bought more TRPs, but more consumer broad TRPs, so not as efficient in actually reaching the people that they needed to talk to. So for the future campaign, really focusing in on those TRPs for IT decision makers. There was a lot of other areas for campaign optimization, and I don't have time to go through all of them. We talked about increasing the brand focus and cross-ad creative synergies, continuing to air the TV execution so they generate more awareness, focusing UK TV TRPs on the core target audience. We also found a big opportunity with the online video investment. They hadn't spent a lot behind online video, but this was a really efficient way of generating awareness of the TV commercials. We also found that video was really working more at the top of the purchase funnel to drive perceptions of HP and introduce these new solutions at a very high level in establishing HP as a leader. Whereas the digital display was more bottom of the funnel. It was more working to drive demand and especially to amplify the impact of the video. If you saw the video and you learned about HP, then you saw the display and you clicked through to their website to actually find out more. The current digital displays were trying to retell the brand story. So we find that the more complex digital displays are, the more subject they are to banner blindness. So if you could simplify that message, knowing that it's working as a call to action, and simplify it to that call to action, we could see better performance for the digital displays doing what they were actually working best at. And then finally, print and out-of-home, focusing those investments more on the target audience as well, in addition to TV, and only funding out-of-home where it could achieve impact. So just want to show you a quick 2-minute highlight of some of the feedback we got direct from the decision makers, which, as Crystal can talk to, was really solidified the decision to move forward with the campaign, hearing it directly from the target's mouth, in addition to the quantitative impact that we were able to prove. It was really difficult to get this down to 2 minutes. We got a really great reel of quotes, so here's some of the highlights.
I've learned so much about different HP products that I have never known that they existed.
Upon viewing these commercials, I was very impressed with the way HP has expanded into areas which I was unknown to some degree.
Apart from just making PC, I mean, people know HP as a company, but very few people know HP as a big data solution provider or a enterprise mobility solution provider.
I didn't know that HP was embarking into the mobile solutions.
It's like a very reliable company, a company that would do a lot of good to my business. I will definitely be on the lookout for HP products.
But after seeing these commercials, I will make sure I find out more and will consider their products more than ever before.
That makes me want to consider them because they've kind of, in a little snippet like a commercial, they've kind of proven to me that they've made a difference. And when you're choosing an IT vendor, you want someone who's going to help you make a difference.
They at least showed signs of innovation coming from HP and the fact that they're coming up with ideas and being thought leaders.
They're moving ahead of the curve, they're innovative thinkers, and they are coming out with solutions that will help my business as well.
So going right into our business implications, this data and that video really showed us that advertising does work in this space. This isn't a space on the enterprise solution side that we had focused much advertising efforts in the past. And it's necessary. As Casey showed, without any advertising, our KPIs were declining. So there's opportunities to do better. The data plus that video was able to help us secure more funding for the campaign. So really having that qual and quant and being able to hear directly from those decision makers was really powerful internally to help us get more funding for the campaign. With that additional funding too, we could really optimize the creative based on the data and be more targeted like the US media buy, which was working much better than the UK. Also, this really validated and highlighted the need for our enterprise solutions to separate itself from the legacy of being a hardware brand. And as I'm sure many of you know, HP actually split into 2 companies as of November 1st. So there's now Hewlett-Packard Enterprise that solely focuses on these areas. And this research really highlighted the need for that separation. So it's very timely. And last, just some tips for other brands out there looking to do research. You can use research to show that your advertising is working, even in the early stages, if prior to seeing any sales lifts, and also being able to supplement that quantitative data with real-world customer testimonials. That those together were really powerful and really helped us. All right, thank you.